Saturday. I'm liking Saturdays because it's very quiet in crypto land. ETH price is down, the gas is down. I feel like I can like transact on like some of those airdrops. Which, by the way, Rug Radio has a nice airdrop of all those little checks based on one of those. The artist from that. Go check out Rug Radio on Twitter. You can get that, I think, in the next couple minutes, actually, next 15 minutes. I do this live, welcome, because I do things that are cogent and sort of in the moment and germane. And please subscribe, and so that you can be notified when I do these things. This is a bit more of a longer view, because this is several months, 3 months of a view going into convention season. It's just like there are these times where they all kind of glom together. And so it's just like NFT LA, NFT NYC, we just had Miami, ETH Denver, South by Southwest. And so, as these are coming up, which ones are worth it? You can't go to everyone unless you can. And, congrats to you. You're banging, you're balling. But, I think for the most part, looking at all of these events, you kind of have to start to target. And I think that, those targets depend on, where you're at in your Web3 journey. So, are you still learning? Well, okay, then, perhaps any number one of those could actually work for somebody who's still learning something that's close to you, something that's, in your neighborhood. Hey, if you're in Texas, come on, South by Southwest is the way to go. If you're in LA, it's just like it doesn't make sense to go to Miami, New York for ostensibly the same programming. But let's talk and let's get deeper into, I think a lot of these kind of come by way of, where they're rooted, and where they're rooted is different. And so, I think that NFT LA, NFT NYC is a bit more marketing driven. And so you'll get a lot of projects there who are doing big parties, who want to have a presence because there's a larger scope of media there. In LA and New York as major cities, there's a lot more press. There's a lot more people that you can invite that can sort of give you sort of some echo, some amplification to your messaging. And so LA, New York, which is why, a lot of the top film festivals are there, a lot of ways of promoting, Web 2 as well as Web 3 are rooted in these major cities. And so, if you're still learning, I think that, sometimes for me, those conventions can be good because if they're close, you can kind of go and connect. But I will say, I was talking about this on a Spaces, that if there's somebody who's been in the space for like 6 months, a year, if you go to these conventions, like specifically like my experience, I'll just speak from my experience in like NFT LA and NFT NYC specifically, because it's a bit more marketing driven, the experience for me tended to be, I was interested in a topic, I would go to a topic, there would be a speaker there, and they would have a very short timeline because they wanted to get so many speakers in so that they could pack these lists full of value and sort of like, oh my gosh, there's so many great speakers here. And you would go, and I would talk to these speakers, and they were super frustrated because they would get, like a 15, 20-minute block to talk. But the actuality is like, okay, this guy's running late, and then you got to jump on there. And you got about like 5 minutes and to talk about the information. So you might touch on one little piece of information that's, that's relational to the topic that you came for. But then you have your pitch, because you're there to sell yourself, like as a speaker, as somebody who's there. That's why you do those things. They're not like calling up the brightest minds. They're opening up applications and people apply. So unless there's, again, we'll talk about programming for each one of these as we go along, but that seems to be the vibe. So you get there and they're just like frustrated, and they didn't like who came on before them because they killed the crowd. So it's like Gary Vee, and then a really, really bad comedian like Minty Fresh Vibes gets up there, kills the whole crowd. The crowd just completely disperses, and then you're up next. Like you're going to be so pissed. And then you only have the 5 minutes, and so you can only say that one thing, and then you have to like go into your pitch thing and say like, hey, follow me on Twitter, and nobody does. And then like maybe you get to have a good conversation after outside the ballroom with that speaker, but it's highly unlikely because of the size. So the size of the rooms are massive at times, most of the time, because just kind of get a lot of people in there, and so that speaker's probably, if they had something interesting to say, is going to be swarmed after their talk. And so you won't really get that connection to the speakers that you'd like. You won't get the the chance to interact with them as well as you'd like. But I think, again, being there and being present is important. And so, like, I think the exceptions there are like ETH Denver. I think I'm going to ETH Denver. This is the thing. I haven't been to ETH Denver before. I've been to a lot of these. I've been to so many conventions in entertainment. I've been to like 12 Comic Cons in a row. And I mean, the con in San Diego. There's a big difference because the smaller cons are awesome, but SDCC is like, the Super Bowl held every year for comic nerds like us. And so, the idea that each of these has a different flavor is so true. So like ETH Denver. ETH Denver is very, for me, it was intimidating last year. I was a bit reticent to go because, just a lot of stuff happening, with production, but like in Web2, but like I was afraid of the hackathon. Like they have this hackathon that goes on a week before. So you have, let's see, so February 24th, let's like kind of show this event here. So the Vital Week begins the 24th to March 1st. It frightens me. Hackathons frighten me because I'm not that good of a programmer. I know how to program. I learn about program. As soon as I heard about ETH, I read the book on Solidity, but I'm not sitting there and I'm not coding day to day. And so it frightens me to be like anywhere near that group so that they might see through the fact that I don't program, especially ETH Denver, and Solidity. And so it was very intimidating for me, and I wished I had gone in, and I'm hoping to again this year. Scheduling prevailing, a lot of weird shoots coming up, but so the core event though, they're making it clear is March 2nd to 5th. More of an educational sort of component to it, where it's more standardized. It seems convention wise, but this is kind of the place where my understanding from last year was, this is kind of where you want, the tech heavy side to meet the money in a sense. So those who are interested in investing, put out bounties for these hackathons. And so if some brilliant people can get something together, they're like, great, fantastic. A, they can identify talent, but B, they can also identify things in the marketplace that they might be overlooking, which they probably are. Because when you get a lot of, big brains in one room, a lot of great, synapses start firing in ways that they normally wouldn't within the construct of, doing a meeting, getting into an office, having an agenda, etc. But when you have these types of things, then you can say, oh, great, fantastic. And if you've contributed to it, from the the donor perspective, you then can, I guess, stimulate them to continue on with that. That's the hope anyway, because that's why they put up those big bounties. They're not putting up the big bounties necessarily, to find talent, but ultimately they'd really love if you could keep going with that, and they want to, and that's a great opportunity, for creators and entrepreneurs and those looking to build in this space, because if you can show up and deliver with a team, fantastic. You can access capital that may continue that journey. And so, but super intimidating for me because I don't know enough. Developers, the ones I do, are so fantastic and so good. They're so busy. Like I can't say like, hey, let's go to a hackathon. I think it is also sort of people who have time for that. And so that's typically people who are sort of younger in the space in terms of learning, and so not like age, but like just being in that mindset where like, hey, I have the time to explore opportunities. And so I'm excited, and I'll be covering live ETH Denver. I'll be there. I'll bring my correspondence, of course. I'll be bringing my my chief party correspondent, of course, out in the metaverse. Bad Money, can you hear me? Hola, yes, I'm here for you and the partying, and it's just a very, very tough for me to separate the geek shit that you meatbags do, with the real fun. The real fun is what I'm talking about. Well, okay, but like there's fun to be had, like in the conventions and stuff. Oh no, it's bullshit, man. It's bullshit. Everybody's there for the parties. Okay, but there's, I guess you're right. There are those opportunities to do the parties are exceptional because they're ways to meet the people that you kind of wanted to connect with while you're going there, and especially if your project or a project that you're in or a project that you like is going to have something, is going to have an event. Those are probably some of the best memories that I have. What do you think I got, man? It was like a coke-filled dream, Miami. It was like a crazy shit town. But it's tough to organize, and so I tell you, if you want to be like the cool fucking guy, if you want to be the cool guy in this space, man, you either like have the party grid, okay? If you know what a party grid is, you're gonna be like the superhero. Okay, so party grids are these kind of harken back down to like traditional Web2 conventions. The Comic-Con has them, and if you can get a hold of them, they're very, very potent because they're amazing parties. And so essentially, it's just a grid of like, who's having a party when. You want to get your hands on that grid very early on because you have to then figure out how to get into the party. Whether that, I think these days, because everything is token gated, it becomes a bit more challenging. Now, this is the thing. It's like, it's not like token gated, like, hey, here's your thing, but it's just like, it's token gated by the way of like, you've got to have a token to be able to then register to get into the party. And so, it's you have to figure out, okay, who's having a party, which ones, interest you, and then how do you get in on and get on those lists. And by the way, it does not guarantee entry, as those NFT NYC well know. Those things can be super, super oversubscribed and can be really, really tough to get into. See, but if you're a big baller shot caller, in a certain project, maybe there's another special line for you. Maybe there's a special line for celebrities like Bad Bunny. And I think it's, if you can't find the party grid, Meatbag, tell them what they can do. I think you're alluding to if being active in this space, and so if you can't find it, if you want to be cool, make it. Like, if you can make the party grid, everyone is going to be your best friend because you're going to know where all the parties are, and you can help digest other lists as well for your community. So if that your community is going and is going to show up in a big way, you can digest those lists for people and work with the mods to be able to post in the Discord. And so that will make you super popular during that time, knowing where all the parties are going to be. And so, and that's the thing is like, also, if your favorite project is going to be there IRL, those are like the best, like, in terms of just engagement. We've been talking to each other, on Discord for years, like a year and a half now, for a collective part of most NFT projects. That are well established, and we see each other in some of the same new projects, and so there's a familiarity to just the names, and so that's the thing though. It's like once you get there, it's like now that I'm here, what do I do? So it's like I didn't know Minty Fresh Vibes was gonna be how I was gonna be known anywhere when I was sitting like 2 years ago, like figuring out a Discord handle. Like, it was just like, or, it was just like, it was kind of like, I was just like, oh, like, this NFT character is he's got like this thing. And so, this is what I'm going to, name him or something. And so it was just like, that sounds funny as if he's my PFP. And so, I was just like, Minty Fresh Vibes. I did not know that was how people are going to be like knowing me. And I say knowing me because I was on my way to NFT NYC last year, and I'm on a plane. And I see somebody with a shirt I recognize from a different project I wasn't in, but I was like, oh hey, you're into that project. She's like, yeah, I'm on the team. And then like I like introduce. I'm like, oh hey, how's it going? Like, I'm on my way to NFT. And when I say, oh, you're great, like I introduce myself as myself. And then like she's like, oh yeah, I'm like, and I was like, I also do a thing where I'm Minty Fresh Vibes, and she's like, oh my god, you're Minty Fresh Vibes. And I was like shocked. She even like knew what who I was or whatever. She's like, oh my god, and she's like starting to like a text to like share like on Twitter, and I'm just like, oh cool, like this is so awesome. But then like she mentioned her name, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I know you from Crypto and Goons. Like, she would pop in here, and I'm flossing the goons because I'll get into it a bit later, is to, again, strategies of the when you're there. So once you're there, there's a lot of strategies in terms of like, networking that I think work well in these environments. And so it's just like, very, very nice to meet somebody, but it's just like, it was suddenly, it was just, solidified in my mind. It was just like, I'm going to have to introduce myself as Minty Fresh Vibes, like everywhere I go now. And so within the space, and so, just context wise, I tried it again, like, when I was there, I'm like, oh, hey, this is me. And like, and I'm in this project and I go by Minty Fresh Vibes. Oh, Minty Fresh Vibes, it's me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's you. And so you end up going by your handle. And so that becomes really a huge part of your identity. And I think we've all kind of seen that evolve. And I think that, but it's just like, it's a weird sort of mind shift that, you should be introducing yourself, as that and interacting as that, because you probably know each other. You probably follow each other on Twitter is the game. Like, you're like, oh, you, and then you like look up, you're like, I follow you. And so, it's a very small world in that way, and it's the best of times. And so, but that's the thing, is get ready to engage. And so, ways of doing that, is kind of an old Hollywood thing that you do in LA and New York. You wear like camera house gear in LA, and so like people are like, oh yeah, are you a DP? Like, you just wear like Panavision, you wear the Panavision hat even though it fits horribly and it just says Panavision, but it signifies like, hey, you are part of the industry. And especially in places like New York and LA, where the convention itself is very, very centralized to like the one location. Most of the action is outside of that. Most of the action is at the parties. And when you're going to and from in the cities, it's really tough to know who's like there for what. There could be like many conventions going on at the same time. Obviously, when you're in Times Square, you don't know anybody until you get into, and the security guard, gets you into the thing, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is the NFT people. Okay, I can start to, geek out now and be okay with that and talk about them without being stared at like I'm a scam artist. And so having that ability to sort of, be present with it, by wearing, gear and physicals, this is the thing, is this. You'll see proof if you come up with, or if you meet any moonbirds at these, they might be wearing something like this. And so Crypto Goons, which, we're a big fan of here at the show, they do amazing physicals. And so they did this collection here. So essentially they put a near field, I think it's an RFID, into the shirt. So they they stitch it into the shirt. I mean, it's washable, I think. I've washed it a couple times. I hope I haven't destroyed it, but I assume it's meant to be, waterproof and sort of wearable in this sense. But when you near field it, there's interaction. And so for this particular shirt, they had a corresponding NFT. And so this was a way to get a phygital and this, but proof, with the Moonbirds, they did very nice. It was almost like a connection card, like, hey, let's connect. And so it was kind of weird. I can't remember which event they did. I think it was probably Miami, where it was kind of debuted. And so you had a lot of people who were coming up to, with phones, but putting it like right near your crotch to just access the tag. I think maybe like as we design more of these, maybe something over here might be good. But like, ways of connecting. And so, because I think we're all looking for ways of doing this. There's a lot of different, ways of sharing contact information, quickly, put down in the comments section, like, because there's so many like different ways that it's almost tough, because like, oh, are you on this? I'm on, this. It's very tough. And then there's the, sort of the common contact card, on Apple. And so, and then there's sort of a danger in that, because, I think we all kind of understand that, when we're using that contact card, we're accumulating a lot of data. And apparently there's like a fault where people can look into your notes section, FYI, if you're sharing that contact card. But what you want to do, as a safety precaution, just a pro tip here, is to share or is to create a whole new separate contact card just to give out, just because it's weird, because your contact card is accumulating information based upon sort of what you're doing with it. And so to start one just for business, just for networking, is important to sort of separate that from the personal information. Pro tip: the more you know. So, but I'm hoping that there's ways beyond that. With a physical business card, there was a lot of physical business cards that get handed out at these things because you need to quickly interact. And so, I believe that those, in terms of Web3 technology, are ripe for adoption. Like, we want those things that are just going to be very, very quick to sort of network with, because it is nice to see somebody with a shirt. Like, there's you'll find a lot of like lawyers do this too. Like, let's have like the name of their like their firm, and then they'll just be hanging out. And these are the great things about being in the convention. Here's like the question: should I actually buy the ticket to the convention? So you could actually attend the events, a lot of the events on the party grid. If it's good party grid, we'll tell you which ones are free and open and avail, and then which ones are token gated. But then you have the idea of going to the convention itself. Is it worth it? There's several hundred. Look, ETH Denver is free. All you have to do is apply. So like, let's just check that one, just like as heck yeah, like go check it out. I'll be reporting there live. I'll give you sort of a heads up on what's going on. But then, when you get into South by Southwest, it's like there's passes. There's very expensive passes. There's levels of passes. And so that's coming up in March 10th to 19th. And now watch this. Then you have to go to NFTLA March 20th to 23rd, which it's just going to be so hard, because, this is the thing. Is like a lot of that crowd is going to be conflicted. A lot of people who are interested in films and tech are going to South by Southwest, and to have NFTLA just sort of on the heels of that is a little tough, because what happens is you'll have the event, so you'll have the 20th to the 23rd, but then like the weekend before, weekend after, you have events. So this is why they plan them like midweek, because it opens up the before and the after weekends to have the events. And so and those will just kind of build out. You'll see like major projects start to stake their claim, as they're building out there. And so is that your experience there, Bad Bunny? It's easy. Like, I get there, I get the party grid, and it grows. So it's like, hey, these are the parties here. But then like suddenly they grow and they grow and they grow, and then I'm like, I'm dancing my butt off, because this is the thing. I can't do like the sit down convention thing, man. I'm like, it's like you gotta. Can you imagine sitting on this butt? Like it's like all like titanium or some sort of metal that hasn't been discovered by humans yet. Exactly. And so there's two different sides of that. Going to the convention, participating in sitting at the talks with. Are you going to be able to talk to people who knows? Are you going to be able to, let me pull up that scene. Are you going to be able to pull up and meet, the people that you want to meet? In the conventions, it's not very easy to do, because you may want to, vibe with, certain ones. So you might, meet up with friends and be like, hey, let's go to here, and then, that'll be, something that you guys go to. But then, like, after that speaker's done, that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes, if it's an hour sort of program, great. But then, like, oh, yeah, the next speaker's up. I'm going to go to fashion. Are you going to, you're going to go to tech? Okay, cool. I'll see you at the party. Like, all you do is talk about the parties that you're going to go to while you're at the convention. And so, but it is kind of nice sometimes to, just meet the random person, that you're going to sit next to. But let's be real. We're all in NFTs because we're kind of a little. there's a hint of introversion, I would say, in a lot of us, and being outwardly outspoken, in areas like that is something that you kind of have to overcome when you're here, because that's the thing is like. You probably have a lot more in common than you think. You're sitting there and you're like, oh gosh, like dude's in a lawyer's shirt. What, you know, I'm going to talk to him about. But he's probably a holder, like, you know, in the thing that you're holding. And so I always found that, and again, like, you know, having, you know, gear and you know, speaking to other friends, you know, about certain things, they're going to want to be interested. Oh, you're talking about that. Like, I love that. Oh, cool. And you can involve them. But it does take a certain level of, I hate, you know, delineating, but introversion, extroversion, but it takes sort of a gear, you know, of like you're being present in the space, because that's the opportunity, right? Is to meet the people. Now, is it worth it, you know, to go there and sit in those conventions? Again, it really depends on your level and where you're at. If you're 6 months to a year in, I think NFT LA and NFT NYC, you could probably skip the convention, like the actual core convention, and just do the partying after and sort of the events outside, because most of the introductions and the learning have to do with, oh, hey, you know, this is the one thing that, you know, I think is cool, and I built an entire business around it, and here it is, and follow me. So, and you're like, cool, that's interesting. You know, maybe you might get inspired by that, but there's just so many, and it comes, and then you have a whole panel of it perhaps, and so you're not really getting as deep as I think that you would like, you know, in those conversations, because they are very surface. And so in that surface, you know, you might get bored. Sometimes, like, you know, you'd sit there, especially if you've been in the space a while, you're like, I should be up there. Like, I usually, like, I can talk about this better than the other person who's up there. This is like, you know, so it sort of disincentivizes you from, like, you know, hanging out and want to sit all day in very, very crowded conditions at times. And so, you know, worth it. It depends on kind of, you know, where you're at. And so, you know, whereas, you know, the programming, I think in South by Southwest, and I'll find out, you know, in ETH Denver for you, but the programming in South by Southwest, you know, is going to be top notch. So, you know, that's kind of worth the pass to be able to sit and talk to industry leaders. These guys, they bring the best. That's why they invited me 2 years ago. But, like, it's they do a significant amount of programming so that the value of that pass is well established. It's like South by Southwest has been doing this for a minute, and so they aggressively produce and, you know, create and program. So meaning that they're reaching out to people. You know, they reached out to me. They're reaching out to people who they believe have significant, you know, things to say about, like, a cutting edge, you know, topic, and so they want to try and facilitate that conversation. So those conversations will be moderated to be a little longer. And have a bit more value, I think, in terms of, you know, the forward-lookingness of this space. And so South by Southwest is definitely on my radar again this year. So, you know, there's a lot out there. Please put down in the comments section, you know, what you're looking at, and, you know, NFT, you know, Sweet Lips, Tennessee, which is an actual place. I looked that up. NFT Sweet Lips, you know, if that's worth it, you know, of where you're thinking of going, and why, because that's the thing. I think that even those that have been doing this know that there's sort of a lack in terms of presentation of experience, of programming, of all these things, to the point where, you know, sometimes you might just want to be entrepreneurial in this space and do your own convention. What's up, Crypto Dilly? Hit me back. I remember that post from a while back. It's just like, you know, it's just like sometimes you just get so fed up. Like, at one, you're just like, guys, they got it all wrong. Like, I'm not having a good experience, you know, at the convention and or, you know, the overall. But I think what ends up being really great is the experiences around it. You know, going to the doodles, golf and putt stuff, like, you know, but connecting, you know, with the brand and seeing a vision for the brand that they have IRL is extraordinary. And, you know, going to a WoW event and you know, seeing just, like, you know, all the good people there. It's like, that's why I'm in WoW, is because some of my favorite people are in WoW. That's why I, like, joined WoW. I'm just like, I love all you guys. Like, why would I want to be in this? And so, but, you know, getting to vibe with those people in that community is the experience. You know, the community is king. Like, we're throwing around that term a lot now. King, and thank you 10KTF, because they understand, and I think that they are you know, kind of at the center right now of, you know, what it means to be a community in Web3, and are demonstrating that, not themselves, but it's crazy. Like, you know, the sort of the community and the way that the community has responded to itself. And so, like if you go to the I noticed at the WoW Awards, like when a 10K TFer won an award, it was just like, the 10K TFers like went crazy in support. And so there definitely is a something to be said about being there and being present for the community aspect of it, and vibing with your community. Beyond sort of like, the marketing and the networking side of things, I do want to say, like, just have fun and vibe. Like, that's kind of, you put a lot of money into this space, a lot of attention into this space. But it is nice just to kind of hang out and eat ramen, with even with just a handful of friends in a project, and get to know them better. Because that's kind of my favorite part of the IRLs and of the spaces, is sort of the more intimate engagements of having a community that you vibe with. Oh man, I know those intimate engagements, man. I got stuck in this like 5-way thing where they put me like this foot down here. It was like left foot red, and I was like, oh shit, it's like way over here. Yeah, look, we know your wild stories of the things that occur at these conventions, but for the most part, it's just about vibing with your community, hanging out and having a good time. And I hope you had a good one.